Hello everyone, I'm Nick from nextstepnick.com and today we're going to talk a little bit about Munchkin Quacked Quest. So bear with me if you hear a bit of a nasally sound. I have got a little bit of the flu at the moment, but I had a bit of a play of this. I wanted to see how it worked, wanted to see how it played. I've heard a lot about the card game and a lot about sort of tabletop games in regard to Munchkin, so I wanted to give it a go. And yeah, it's interesting. It's basically like a party-based game where each game you start, you'll get 4 cards that will adapt how the game modifies, how things change in regard to playstyle, enemies you fight, the layout of dungeons, and also the bosses that you come up against during your fights. So it's quite interesting. There's a lot of different things that can happen. So you can have enemies spawned as a different type, you can all be having backwards controls. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do. The only thing I would say though is that it's very much a multiplayer game and there doesn't seem to be online modes, but we'll get back to that later. In regard to gameplay, it's quite fun. It's quite fun. It can be a little bit hectic at times. The controls are a little bit stodgy, so like here I've got to push these skeletons into the goo there, like the red ooze. And it's a little bit complicated in regard to gameplay, like it can feel unreceptive, and that does add to the fun if you're playing with other people, I'm sure. But when you're playing on your own or you're playing with bots, because you have to play with bots, it doesn't feel that great. As you finish each time, you'll get like a new card option as well, so when you finish an overall game you get rewarded with extra additional options. So there's a lot of replayability in regard to the random elements of the game. You can choose as well what's in it and what isn't in regard to gameplay features, but as far as the multiplayer goes, I think you can only get bots, and the bots is kind of where this falls down. So I'm playing this via the PC Game Pass. It's a lot of fun, but I think it would be better on a console, like I say, for the multiplayer elements. But it's a fun game, but the bots, for example, are a little bit dim, so if you do rely on them, the AI isn't great. Gameplay-wise as well, as you can see here, it can be a little bit stodgy and confusing. Like, you can't always tell what's going on, especially with a lot on the screen, and the characters aren't that well defined, which is strange, because when I started I thought they were I really liked the design of the characters, but they don't stand out very well. So you'll see there with the colours, for some reason, maybe it's the muted palette, they don't stand out very well. You end up in this cluster, and when you can barge each other and interfere with each other, it just ends up a bit confusing. So like here, the premise of basically every map is to find this duck first, or collect the maximum number of ducks. If you die, you just come back to life. So if you do die, it's not really like a loss of stakes. You lose coins, so when you finish the game you get graded on a lot of different things, but every time you get X amount of coins, you'll see the bar on the top left there, you'll level up, and the overall winner will have the most levels, and those ducks also work towards that because you gain rewards for finishing each level. That being said, it gets a bit boring because that seems to be the only objective. Collect a duck, collect as many ducks as possible. I mean, you're fighting against enemies here, like you can see me fighting, but as you can see, there's a lot going on, and it's not that easy to understand exactly where you are at times. There are floor panels that slow you down, like the ice. There are some that you fall through. There are some that will impale you. There are some that will do all sorts of things like that. But for the most part, you're running around fighting, collecting coins and items that sort of enhance your build. Not fully, to be honest. I mean, I've finished this sort of mode basically using the same weapon the whole way through. But there are all different ways to adapt and play, which are kind of fun, but at the same time, like I say, there's not a lot of variation. For all these different items and things like that, there's not a lot of variation in regard to the actual objective. It's very rare that you get an objective other than find this duck, find as many ducks as possible, hit this thing. There's not any more than that, and I feel like for a party game, what you really need is like a wide range of different game modes. You need stuff like, you know, races and things like that as well, instead of just run here, pick this up and then you're done. Like I say, the bots as well really let this down. They tend to get stuck on things, they get confused by passages. Sometimes they'll completely avoid objectives, other times they'll beeline straight for them. They regularly get in the way and fall down pits and things like that by accident. I feel like there's more that needs to be done, especially, like I say, if there was online functionality for this, I think it would be a lot more fun. If you're playing with your friends, of course it would be a lot more fun than playing with AI. In regard to the combat, you've got a load of different weapons you can use. So you've got stuff like hammers, crossbows, swords, daggers. But to be honest, because of the nature of the game, it's a lot easier to get a sword like the one I started off with here and just flail. Because if you're using anything that requires precision, the likelihood is it's not going to work out that well. You don't really have this element of targeting. You just sort of aim towards a certain area and flail around, and that's basically it. It's one of those games with a lot of promise if you're playing it with friends, a lot of promise. There's a lot you could potentially do here, but if there's no online functionality, it just doesn't really make sense to play. You just end up steamrolling the competition, and although you can add these modifiers and things like that, they're not that fun to play with. I mean, if you were laughing with friends, it would be completely different, but I don't know. I think the thing with this game is that it's a really, really good, interesting game for multiplayer, but it needs to be expanded upon. That formula needs to be added to. Like, you need to add different game modes that really mix up the formula. I mean, with like this aiming, for example, you'll see this map here, it looks similar. That's because we've already played it once already, and this is within the same game variation. I look different because I picked up a card, but this is literally the exact same map that I've just played, and that's a problem in that if in one game mode you can end up playing the same thing over and over again, it does get a bit boring, and that's a shame. I feel like it would have done well from different modes. I feel like if you'd added a lot more in regard to... I'm thinking of games, to be honest, like Crash Bash, things like that, things like Super Mario Party, where there's a lot of mini-games on offer, and for that reason, it doesn't get stale. Even when you're playing with bots, it doesn't really get stale because there's a lot of fun things you can do. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good game. It's got a nice art style, it's really enjoyable, but it's just very... Yeah, I mean, this is an example of what I was saying about those mini-games. You always have a boss at the end of each run, and you get graded on how much damage you do to the boss. So the more damage you do, the more likely you are to win that mode. But like with this boss, for example, if you die in this game, there's no life system per se. You drop a few coins, but that's not really a big deal. So you can stand, like I do in a minute, you can just stand there and just wail on him, because even if he kills you, you can just spawn directly back in front of him again. There's, like, here I'll die, I turn into a ghost, I just basically sit in front of him, and then I'll spawn back in again, and then I can start wailing on him again, which means all the ads and different things around the arena are kind of wasted. Because there's no actual stakes, I can just win this round by just standing there and flailing. And I think that's the problem, is that if you tailored these game modes to suit this game style, if they were much more platform orientated, where, you know, 3 lives, once you're out, it would be a lot more effective. I think that's the thing, is that at the moment it feels like there's something missing. It's not quite there. I really enjoyed it from a gameplay perspective for the first 5 minutes. After that, it was just going through the motions, and it goes on for quite a long time. I think with friends it would be really, really fun, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're going to play with bots. So at the PC Pass, for example, I'd probably give it a miss. If you're getting it on the Game Pass on console, definitely give it a go, get a few friends round. But I think what really needs to happen is there needs to be more variation. There needs to be more additional features here, because it is a good game and there's a lot to praise, but I just don't feel like I could play this for more than half an hour without a good group of friends. And like I say, I've been through the options, I've had a real deep look into all the different menus and different areas to find out if there is any multiplayer functionality, and maybe there is, maybe I'm missing it, but there just doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be bots or nothing. If you haven't got bots, you can't start, and that's a shame. That's a shame, because I think it's got a lot of potential if they do add in that matchmaking option. But yeah, so that's Munchkin, Quacked Quest. It's an interesting game. It's got a lot going for it, but it just needs a bit of refining. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. It really helps out with me making content. And other than that, I hope you have a great day. Head over to nextstepnick.com to find all my latest articles, news and reviews as well. And hopefully I'll catch you again very soon. Thank you and goodbye.